Welcome to Healthcare's Missing Link, a weekly podcast to help you uncover hidden things that steal your health. Thanks for joining us today. Here's your host, Dr. Mark Sherwood.
Today it gives me great pleasure and honor to welcome one of my good friends, 14-year Major League Baseball veteran, Jack Howell, to the program. Jack, man, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate the offer to be here, and just looking forward to not only this podcast, but the continued health that you have been giving me, and I really appreciate everything you do for me.
Man, so let's kick it off. I mean, you played in the big leagues 14 years, and I think you played in Japan a couple years too, right?
Yeah, 4 years.
Wow, so that's 19 years of professional baseball. That's about 10 years older than I am, I think, sir. I don't know.
Then you feel.
Man, you know, in all those years, I'm sure you had a lot of highlights and probably lowlights, but if you could just take a moment for, you know, our viewers, listeners, just what are the top maybe 2 or 3 highlights that you experienced during those times?
Well, definitely getting a chance just to spend one day in the big leagues. I think I saw somewhere where, 2% of all the thousands of people that play, whether out of high school or college, even get the opportunity. And then that's probably a little larger percentage than that. But then of the ones that do get a chance to sign a pro contract, it's only about 2 or 3% of those actually make it. And then there's probably a whole nother percentage of being able to, the goal is you get 10 years in the big league. So to answer your question, is just the fact that I got that opportunity was one highlight, definitely. And then to get called to the big leagues is another. And then to think back like you did, that not only 10 years, but 12 or 13, 4 also in Japan makes 17, is just, boy, you look back and you just so many things to be thankful for. So just the opportunity to be a big league ball player, as I look back, I've been so blessed. And then, thinking about that highlight career, probably for those that don't know that much about me, quote unquote, my claim to fame was Vin Scully in the game of the week in about 85. 86. I hit a broken bat home run in Yankee Stadium. And as they're replaying that, and it's been on the top 20 home runs in the past before, and you hear Vin Scully, who's, the Hall of Fame announcer, say that, I think that's the first broken bat home run I've ever seen. So that's kind of been my legacy, or the thing that the piece of history that I kind of left behind. And then now, getting into the history, you talked about 19 years as a player. This would be my 19th season now, being in player development in the pros. So now the highlights are being able to give back to players, try to encourage them, and get them mentally tough to try to get to the big leagues, and just be there as a mentor for them. That's been a wonderful experience as well.
I'm going to make sure and have that clip down below in this feed, because you can find it certainly with a Google search, but we're going to make sure to have that for you. It is a classic Vin Scully call that is so unforgettable, and that's really cool. Now, we actually met when we were in Japan doing some work for a company, and we just kind of hit it off. I mean, you've always been a super humble guy despite all of that. How do you maintain your humility and your gratitude?
Well, I think I was brought up with my grandfather was a Baptist preacher. My dad was a star basketball player here in Tucson at the University of Arizona, and obviously came from a great family. My mom is deep in her faith. So from the time I was born, I was raised with wonderful, wonderful parents that definitely raised me right. I have to give them the credit. But then got into, a baseball industry that, we're traveling around, where everybody wants a piece of us, and it can be a different type of lifestyle. And I think because of that upbringing, I was able to, thanks for the compliment, but, remain humble and understand my roots and where I came from. And then, you hit on the main thing, is you and I hit it off. And I think the key to that is you have to surround yourself with people that build those characters in you. And I think that's why we've hit it off. You've been a wonderful support, both personally and physically. And you have to, iron sharpens iron. So you have to be around people that sometimes, and you've had to tell me things that I don't want to hear. Out of love, they're honest with you, and they sometimes tell you things you don't want to hear, but they keep you on the straight and narrow. So those to me are the key things, the way I was raised, and then continuing to be around people that help you to grow.
Jack, do you think that attitude helped you stay around the big leagues that long? Because you see so many people, and I know our listeners are thinking, well, there's these people that come in, they hit these levels of professional athleticism. They don't last for long because the lifestyle seems to just get the best of them. They start making bad decisions. Did you think like that? Like you just saying, while you're in the big leagues, I got to hang out with the right people, and I got to maintain a balance in a good circle. Was that going through your mind during those times?
Yeah, I've looked back not only on how I made it through high school as not a very quote unquote good player. You think about my career, I wasn't drafted. I was signed as a free agent. So I think, I don't want to call it the underdog, but I think I was always the guy that just had to work for everything, had to remain humble and just continue to work. Don't let people don't believe in the things that people are saying, believe in yourself. And I think throughout my whole career, it's been that story. So again, I have to go back to the way I was raised. But, on the other hand, I mean, we can be raised in the faith but we can put ourselves in situations sometimes that can get us in trouble. And I think for whatever reason, I think I call it a mindset. As I look back on my career, I think I just had a mindset of what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, and what I wanted to accomplish. And, it wasn't that, hanging out with players at the bars or going out late at night and things like that. It wasn't that they were, necessarily were bad people. It's just I chose to go back to the hotel room. Maybe it was the fact that I married early, so I know I had to get back and call Kelly. We had our first child, Josh, when I was in A-ball, just 1 year into pro baseball. So obviously I had some responsibilities and a wife and a family at home that once the game was over, I needed to go home and check in on them. So I just mindfully, continued to do things that I knew were good for me. And I just didn't put myself in rough situations.
Hey, Jack, you and I got acquainted, obviously, in the arena of health, and then we became friends, and certainly we've had many, many heartfelt conversations. We've probably known each other close to 20 years now. That's like a long time. It's crazy. And I was thinking back on that. That's like unique. I remember walking in Japan with you where people were walking around, and this is funny. So those of you that are listening in Japan, maybe don't take this wrong. It's, oh, Jack Howell, it's like, and I'd go, oh, Jack Howell, and it was cracking me up the whole time. But you were gracious and kind to everybody. Now, I think, didn't you win an MVP or home run title over there 1 year?
Yeah, my first year in the second half, I had a big second half and I almost won the Triple Crown. And they honored me with the MVP, which not Gaijin player means an American player. There's only 2 or 3 of us on each team, so we're definitely the minority. And rightly so. You would think that if they were going to pick an MVP, it would probably be a Japan player. But I think I had such a big season and helped the Swallows get into the World Series that year, although we lost in the 7th game. But I think because of that, they humbly, gave me the award. So, it was that first year was pretty exciting, and that was a neat experience for me, especially being away from home, having, at that time had 2 kids, and then that halfway point at that season, the twin girls were born. So there was a lot of outside pressure on me, man, with family being home, Kelly home, having the twins, and there was a lot going on. So that was a neat reward for a pretty tough season that I had to fight through.
Now, Jack, all this time, you and I have talked fitness and wellness and health, and not just physical health. We've talked emotional health, spiritual health. We've talked financial health, and we've talked, of course, this physical health. How important was your physical fitness level for you, and just the health aspect in relation to your ability to stay in the big leagues that long and relatively injury-free?
Yeah, I give weight training. The reason why I got to the big leagues, I mentioned earlier that I wasn't a big star out of high school. I actually redshirted my first year and walked on here at the local junior college. And in that season, that off season where I didn't play right out of high school, I had a year to really mature. I believe my license my senior year was 5'4", 135 or 140 pounds. And then, yeah, it was a real little guy. And I, during that red shirt period, I just went to the Pima gym there and worked out and lifted like crazy. And I remember walking in, I tell the story all the time to the coaches. One of the coaches, a very famous coach, was the assistant GM for the Marlins for a long time. But we tell the story all the time that I walk in after, a year and some change removed from maybe them seeing me in high school. And I walk in and ask if I could try out. And they said, sure. What's your name? And I said, Jack Howell. And I can't use the word on this podcast, but he said, that little, what from Palo Verde High School? And I said, yeah. And at that time I had grown to 6 foot and I was about 195 pounds.
Whoa, so, in 1 year.
Yeah. So there was obviously a late bloomer, but through that, to answer your question is that I was somewhere smart enough to know that I better lift and get stronger. And so I give that weight training a lot of credit. And then, we talked earlier about those ups and downs of a season and me always trying to have to prove that I belonged in the big leagues. And so I would stay late hours and lift and work out. I was very fortunate to, if anyone wants to YouTube this, they can also look up Brian Downing, who was a star baseball player.
Yeah.
But he was strong as could be, man. And I befriended him. He was my lifting partner many a time on the road in whatever city we were in. He would always look up and find the nearest Gold's Gym or a Y, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, while probably everyone else was sleeping until noon, we were at the Y lifting, which in those days, you think about the 80s, especially the late 80s, first part of the 90s, heavy weight training was not a big deal for, wasn't a good thing for us big league players to be doing. They were afraid of injuries and stuff. So we were kind of doing that, on our own time. And then, of course, now weight training is huge in pro baseball. But so, yeah, I definitely give weight training. But, really, as all my life I've done it. But, and again, I have to say that, our contact that we had about 4 or 5 years ago, where I just said, look, I'm lifting, but I'm getting heavy. Some of the personal things that were going on from a mindset of mine just wasn't working. And until you did all the DNA testing on me and then really got me in better health, not necessarily shape, definitely, but definitely that health aspect has really, really helped me now, as I get older. And I guess what I'm trying to lead to is I wish that all the years that I was doing the lifting, that I was also understanding nutrition and really some of the supplemental things that we can do to really take care of ourselves, which is not only, the body, but then what it does for the mind and the spirit and everything else. So learned it a little bit late, but I know you've added years to my life and I'm thankful for it.
Well, that's very kind of you. And I do consider it a pleasure and honor, first of all, to be your friend. And then second, to be able to offer what I can do in life to help you. And I think you had told me recently, you've been in player development and management of younger ball players in organizations. And I think you had some comments made about you and the way you looked recently during some training. How did that go? And can you explain what that was?
Well, that was, yeah. I think the thing is that I showed up, and so I've always been a weightlifter, and they've known me as that. So I've always been big size, but always, just carried a little bit too much weight. And so it was actually, last year around October, I think, when you really got me right and really got me on the right track, and I really started watching what I was eating, and then with supplements and things, it's been incredible. And so I show up. That started in about October. And then, so I show up in March, what was that, about March 10th, I believe I show up for our minor league spring training. And it was, I didn't think much of it. I definitely felt better. I knew I looked a little bit better, but it was amazing. All the other coaches, tons of players that I'd had in the last few years. They just said, Jack, what have you been doing, man? You look outstanding. You look in such good shape. You look 20 years younger. All the staff, front office, and players. It was crazy because, I guess you probably know, or most people know, when you're looking at yourself every day, you see the little changes, but not as much. But then these people hadn't seen me in 6-7 months, and they were really impressed. So that was that was really a huge kicker, because again, it's not about how you look. They weren't necessarily, talking about how I looked. It was the fact that they mentioned that I just looked so much younger and so much, thinner in the face and things like that. So you can look at it like a compliment, or you can say, man, what did you really think of me before, man?
That's a good way to look at it. Now, you and Brian Downing back in the day, as you were talking, were you guys kind of trailblazers in the area of weight training in baseball? Because I remember that very well. They talked was you're going to get stiff. You're not going to be able to throw the ball anymore. You're not going to be able to hit. You're not going to be able to run. And of course, things have changed now. Were you guys kind of on the leading end of that?
Yeah, I got to give the credit to Brian Downing, just because it was very obvious he was a big power lifter, and he was the star. So a lot of eyes were on him as to, should they be doing that? And finally, when they believed that he was so good at it, and that he had taken on myself and a couple other young players that were coming up, I think they realized, look, this isn't going away, and they're following this veteran guy, which is why we keep veteran guys around, for their leadership qualities. And I think they realized, the Angels I'm talking about now, that it was, we're not going to beat them, so we might as well try to find a way to join them. So they loosened up on that. They asked us if we would now start sharing with them the things we were doing, just so they could monitor it. And then the reason why I say I give him the credit is because in the old Angel Stadium, and I'm talking about it's still at the same spot, but as you know, a few years back they did major construction in the old stadium. Coming right out of the training room. You would come out of the training room, make a right, and go to the elevators to go up, to go to your car, or go to wherever the family section was. But if you walk straight, there was these two big double doors, and there was a fairly big sized room in there. But Brian had asked Mr. Autry, the Autry family, if they would come down one time and get the city. It was owned by the city, so get the city to open up that door. And what it was since the city owned the stadium, it was a huge storage warehouse for all the city. Oh my gosh, what am I thinking of? The things that are rolled up, the plans. Yeah. All the plans of anything that went on in the city. When they built something, they wanted to hold on to those big tubes and rolls of plans. And there was just thousands and thousands of those just stored in there. So he asked them, he said, man, this would be perfect if we could if you could talk the city into moving that. And he said, if you'll get the city to move that and get us a key to this, he said, I will pay for all the equipment, and I'll bring in equipment, and so that we can have a weight room. So they did that, and it was that room that had most of his weights. I believe I bought a few little deals and put them in there, but for the most part, he kind of started that. And I think at the time also Oakland had a little kind of gym like that off to the side. I remember when we would go to Oakland, they had a little gym. Of course, you had in those days Mark McGuire and some of those Canseco, some of those guys. So you knew that they were pushing it too. So I'm sure there was more, but I would definitely say, I'll guarantee you, Brian Downing is a big part of that.
Well, obviously it helped, because I think we all remember back in those days as he was the star and was just good at everything. And I think people were starting to see his power just increase during his career. Now, as your career has progressed, you're still very much involved in the game, as we've talked many times. You deal with young players all the time. What do you tell them regarding this subject matter, like fitness, and not just lifting, but even now nutrition and supplementation? What's that conversation like?
Well, luckily now, much different than obviously when I played, but luckily now we have more staff. So we do have a strength coach, certified strength coach, that travels with us and is with our players all the time. So I kind of leave that up to them and what the organization allows them and expects of them to do in that regard. He's also in charge of a little bit of their nutrition. And then we do have a nutritionist that travels around. She's not there all the time, but she'll sneak in and check in on guys. They do have to kind of record the things they're doing, and we do kind of track that. Where I kind of play the part in that, which is, again, not continuing to talk about what you've done for me, but I think it's been important that you lead by example too. And so, I don't think you want a manager that's, 100 pounds overweight, walking around eating, fried food and a bunch of snacks and stuff and drinking beers in the clubhouse, telling players they need to watch what they're eating. It's probably not a good sell. So I've tried to also, in where I play the part in it is lead by example. And then, of course, where I can help too is that being the manager, and I'm the one overseeing the club throughout the 6 months. It's the strength coaches job to come to me and mention to me that somebody missed a lift, or somebody's goofing off when we're having weight sessions, somebody's bringing some different types of food into the clubhouse, then it would be my job then to just let them know that that's not allowed. You know, that I can't be really in charge of what you're doing away from here. That's going to have to be your choice. But when you're around here, you know, we don't eat like that. We don't act like that. And that, you know, part of being an angel is that you have to participate in our strength program and give it your best effort. So I guess I'd be more of a disciplinarian than really overseeing their strength and conditioning and their nutrition.
Well, it's pretty interesting, though. You sort of are one that looks out for them as a manager, mentor, role model, teacher, and along those lines. I think you mentioned something very key that I hope people catch. If you want to be a leader, a mentor, a teacher, you need to live it out. That's important, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think because of my long career, you know, I think back of those mentors and those ones that meant the most to me, and I don't think it was as necessarily as much as what they were saying as that they lived that life. You know what I mean? Those were the ones that really meant a lot to me. And again, you know, not that you have to have played the game to be a big hitting coach or like that, but you know, most of the guys that, you know, Joe Madden is one. He never played in the big leagues, and he's gone on to be a very successful manager. He was my rookie manager, and he just, you know, he had a wonderful mindset. He really got to know his players. He really got to know, and I knew that he truly cared for me. But then more like what you and I were talking about earlier about what you've meant to me is that he was also not afraid to tell me what I needed to hear sometimes, even though that was a tough message sometimes. So, you know, I think that definitely is the key to at least be, I guess we're calling practice what you preach a little bit. Obviously, I can't go out and hit now for them, but at least I can let them know the things that I did and the things the organization expects, and then just try to convince them to do that. I think you talked a little bit about player development. I think it leads into this a little bit, is that the other way that, you know, I focus a lot on leading is, you know, guys get so much caught up in the results. And I think you probably from your functional medical talks and stuff too know that it's more about the process and not the result right away. You tell me that we don't have to stare at the weight scale all the time, that if we continue to, you know, make good choices in our food and at least show up to the gym, at least show up, you know, that the results will be there. And it's kind of the same thing with players. Don't worry so much about your results right now. Think more of the process of how we're going to get there. And if the process is right, the results will show.
It's very interesting because along the lines of baseball, I think our listeners would get that if you're a great hitter, you're going to fail 70% of the time, so to speak. Okay. You know, it's interesting. And it's not really about focusing on those failures. It's about focusing on a consistent step-by-step process that generates per capita long-term and continued results. Is that what you're trying to say and kind of encapsulated there?
Definitely. I'm drawing a blank on the book now. I also read the book, The Compound Effect. That was a wonderful book that I read. You know, I can't go into great detail on it because I forgot a lot of it. But the big thing was I'm a big Starbucks guy, you know, and it talks about there's nothing wrong with the $3.50 coffee. It's that then they did the numbers and they ran that $3.50 coffee over 20 years. And it's a lot of money, you know. It's the compounding effect of that. So you're right. That can work in a negative way in that regard about spending too much on Starbucks. But then on the other hand, I believe what you're talking about when we talk about process is you know, it's the day-to-day, just making a good choice, making the best choices you can. And over 10 or 15 years, the results will be there.
Jack, there are a lot of people that follow us, of course, from different walks of life, some young athletes all the way to physicians to just the lay public and journalists wanting to know more about health. But for those people out there that are listening right now that maybe have younger athletes or younger baseball players, whatever, baseball, football, basketball, whatever the case may be, what advice would you give them? What would you tell them that are some keys to just giving themselves the best opportunity to be the best they can be?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about, you know, being a mentor or leader, I mean, I think nowadays you have to really understand the kids that we're dealing with, and it's not the same as us, you know, the old coaching of just do it because I said, or, you know, do it the way I did it type of thing, or just do it because I said, you know, with these these kids nowadays, and for a lot of years now, I've noticed in player development it doesn't work. I think the first thing is you have to gain some trust in them, so you have to befriend them. I think you really have to get to know them. I've preached in the past when I was a field coordinator and I had to train coaches and coordinators. I talk about learn the learner. And so it's very important that we learn and understand about them. I think the other important thing is not to put everyone in bucket. I talk about putting them in different buckets, because let's face it, all our talents and our abilities and our size and everything is all different. So I think it's very important that as we're leading these young men, that we put them in different buckets. It's not fair to compare one guy to our number one pick who's super athletic and can jump over the roof and can run like a deer, and has incredible strength. We have to put guys in each bucket, and then what you try to do is tell them to be the best in that bucket, and if they can come up out of that bucket, then they can slowly move as they progress. So I think it's just really learning the learner, understanding them, not realizing that also everyone learns differently. The big thing that I've had to learn now is, we talk about these kids now, their heads are always down and on a phone somewhere. And I remember early on in my player development, about 5-6 years ago, I'd bring them in my office and try to get them to look me straight in the eye and have this long talk with them. And it was an older, longtime coach friend of mine that told me, he said, "Jack, you got to learn these kids, man." And he says the face-to-face speech doesn't work that much anymore. He says, "You'd be surprised. Just text them. Send them a nice little text, send them a little email." And it's amazing how all of a sudden they're just texting back like crazy, and now they're really opening up to me. They can just they just communicate differently. So we have to find the ways to get that communication out of them. What's the best way to give them that information? I think, again, I'm not a pro when it comes to kind of the teaching mechanics and things now, but obviously, there's visual learners, there's audible learners, but the key is just, what works for them, and then use it. But most importantly, I think I talked about, you got to get them to trust you, and they have to know that you really, really care about them.
Jack, there's a lot of us out here on the other end of the spectrum that are, let's call us older athletes or aging athletes or even aged athletes. What would you tell that group? In other words, in regard to this stuff about staying physically fit and eating right and all that, how important is that for all of us that are aging?
The thing that really worked for me, again, being this guy that would lift, but I would go through these phases, and then I was always on YouTube and whatever, trying to find the over 50 workout or the workout for 55 and over, and you got to do this and you got to do that. And boy, I tell you, after delving through that, realizing that yes, that the lifting and the working out was pretty important, but that it's individualized. The same thing like I was saying earlier, what works for some guy on YouTube at 50 might not work for me. So you got to really get to know yourself and know what works for you. I think to add to that, what I want to say is that what's really helped me since October is when you really pounded me hard about my food choices, and that it just, again, I've got to the point now where I don't miss meals. I enjoy my meals, but it's the right type of meals, and I don't even think about sugar now anymore. And so I think definitely you can work out like crazy, but man, if you're not supplementing, and if you're not, making those incredible healthy choices that I know you guys talk about a lot, and staying away from some of that stuff that just destroys you. To me, we used to tease, you're playing for the tie. I don't even think at our age we're playing for the tie anymore. I think if you're not getting in the gym and working out daily, even if you walk in and there's sometimes I come in for 20 minutes and I go, you know what, that's all I got today, but I showed up. And then ultimately, on the days I'm really lifting heavy, boy, I got to where if I was not making good choices, or I'd say, you know what, it's okay, I'm going to go out and have a nice meal tonight and really mess that up. It's amazing how you're not playing for the tie, you're actually going into a deficit. And so I still got a ways to go, but I'll tell you, since October, I think I called you about 2 weeks ago, man, and I was in a little bit of a lull, man. And I was ready to really start wondering, and I think you just encouraged me to stay the course, man. And I think I texted you yesterday, said, man, I'm back on fire again. Yeah. So, just like our players, we're going to have those 0 for 4s and those 1 for 10s. but man, we got to stay the course and keep plugging, because there's a 10 for 10 right around the corner, man.
Boy, that's a life lesson right there. That is like great encouragement and advice for everybody. No matter what you're going through in life, there's a 10 for 10 around the corner. That's just how people really can even consider tweeting that out there, putting it out there on Instagram, because that's a beautiful quote. Hey, Jack, you're a busy guy. I know that at the time of this recording, we're in the middle of this weird time called pandemic and all of that. We've had to all adjust, but you're busy doing a lot of stuff. What are you working on right now? And one question. Number two is, how do people get a hold of you and follow what you're doing?
Well, I appreciate that question, because I think, we're all, we can find the negatives, and just turn on the TV. We can find the negatives in this COVID quarantine time that we're in. But, and I know we all went through the little lulls of it, but I'll tell you what, this is turning out to be kind of a blessing for me, in that, like I said, it's really allowed me to focus on my health, for 6 months. Again, I'd much rather be with my team right now in the Midwest League, traveling on those 12 to 20 hour bus rides, but unfortunately through that, we're forced to kind of have some bad food. We have ballpark food around a lot, so it's harder to make those choices. So it's really helped me make good choices on health. It has given me more time to focus on my training, which has been good. So that's the positive of it. The other thing too is that, so I'm furloughed by the Angels, which means I still get health care. And I'm still an employee, but with no minor league baseball, I'm not getting a paycheck. And, I can't really go out and get another job or whatever. So it really was cool in that you inspired me so much, and I was feeling so good that we moved back to Tucson right after spring training got shut down, because my mom's 90 and I was afraid of her not taking care of herself during COVID. So Kelly and I were in Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, and with our grandkids, and we decided to come back out to Tucson, and we rented a home here and to be around my mom. But what's come from that is I reunited with a friend that we've been friends for 35 years when I played in Anaheim, and he lives literally 6 blocks from me. He's got a beautiful home, 7,000 square foot home. He's been very successful in his life, and he's got this beautiful indoor gym, man. And so I told him I was in town. He said, come on over, man. We sat around and talked about old times or whatever. He showed me the remodels he's done on the house and what he's done to the weight room. And this sounds like something I learned from Mark, but I said, the gym looks good. When was the last time you were in it? And he said, well, that's another story. I hadn't been in there in probably 4 or 5 years.
No way, 4 or 5 years.
And so again, I have a hard time talking about myself, but he said, you look like you've kept in shape. And I said, well, I'm getting there, man. And he said, well, what are you doing on Tuesday? And I said, well, I don't know, probably taking my mom somewhere. Kelly and I are probably going somewhere. I said, I'm probably going to work out or do something. And he goes, okay, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, you're going to come here at 7 in the morning. From 7 to 8, you're going to train my wife. And from 8 to 9, you're going to train me. And I said, okay, good. And we've been on that. We're on our 25th workout. So what are we? 4, 3, 6, 9, 12. So we're 2 months in. He's lost 8 or 9 pounds. She's lost 6 or 7 pounds. They haven't missed a beat. I'm doing some high intensity training with them and getting them. I'm teaching them all the things you taught me about, better eating. Matter of fact, Kelly and I made bell peppers with the stuffed beef, the no grass, no finished meat, and brought it over to him the other night for dinner with some watermelon and a nice salad. And it has been, I guess what I'm really getting at is it's amazing how now I've loved training all my life and never thought of being a trainer, but now I'm being able to train friends and see the success they're having and the goals that they're trying to reach. And it really made me think of you and the things you're doing. And man, what a wonderful enjoyment you must get out of helping people, man. I never ever had really, I've helped a lot of players probably, but, I don't ever see really the fruits of that because they go on to the big leagues or maybe they go on to another career and you don't know what impact you had on them. But this has been a great experience seeing them they're also doing some construction on the east side of the house, changing some rooms around. And he does a lot of the construction himself. And it was just about 2 weeks ago when he says, 7 in the morning, man, he goes, dude, I got to tell you, I'm getting up and down that ladder painting like I've never got up and down a ladder before. It used to be a struggle, so You just see those neat little accomplishments, and man, it makes you feel good. And so going back to the COVID, I know that was a long answer, but I'm just really trying to find the positive things that's allowed me to kind of get away from the game a little bit and really focus on myself and then focus on other people.
Certainly, one thing we talk about all the time, you and I have talked about, is this concept of giving people hope, and then once you give them hope, they become a hope dealer. And certainly, you've done that. And I think people really appreciate the advice you've given them today. That you're going to have those 0 for 4 days. You're going to have those 1 for 10, 2 or 3 days in a row. But your 10 for 10 is right around the corner. Man, that just gives me chills to think about that. Very, very good. You got a good media following. How do people get a hold of you or follow you, Jack?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'd really like them to, if they would, go to my website, which is www.jrhowell.me. That's www.jrhowell.me. On my website, I have some videos and stuff. You'll see the Broken Bat home run, the Kerry Wood game that I was in. That's pretty cool stuff. And then there's just some neat little things that you can go on there. Obviously, there's a little thing you can click on, which will take you to Functional Medical Institute. That's on there as well. And then I have a Control the Zone series on there, which if they click on that, and I've got to say, I'm sorry, I haven't added as many videos in the last 6 or 8 months, but there's some pretty cool 30-minute little videos where it just kind of a lot of the things we're talking about, but I try to add in a little bit of my faith, and I think it would be for athletes. It could be for anyone that's trying to, have a better relationship with whatever they're dealing with. So there's some cool videos there. They can send me an email at jrhowelljr@gmail. Go ahead and send me an email there. And then if they want, if they're interested, they can go to Blog Talk Radio /Mancini Sports. And I will tell you that every Wednesday from 4 to 4:30 Arizona time, which I believe that's Mountain time, from 4 to 4:30, I do a little 30-minute podcast called Control the Zone. And it's just the aim is to help people either gain some more control of or find some control of what area in life that might seem out of control. And that would obviously pertain to who my guest is. We try to pull insights out of there. I say that sometimes it's just one new insight which might completely change the way you view the world and your place in it. So we try to pull some insights out of my guests to help them hopefully find some control. Great example would be my son was on there, and he works for Nerd Power here in Tucson, solar panels, and that would be in controlling your finances and controlling your electrical bill, things like that. Another buddy of mine was on there who's a senior loan officer, and now the rates are at historic low rates. So maybe lowering your mortgage, just things like that. And he had some wonderful insights on things to do if you are interested in refinancing or getting a loan. So hopefully that Control the Zone has been kind of a word I've used over the years. And we don't have a lot of control over a lot of things, but if we can gain a little bit of control or just get one insight that can change the way we view the world and our place in it, then, I feel like I've been a help. So.
Well said, and I want people to know that we're going to put all of those links right below in the feed to make sure you connect with Jack. You've been very gracious, very kind, very hospitable to join us, and I appreciate your friendship most of all. That's the greatest thing I could get. That's the treasure. So any last closing words of encouragement you want to say to our folks?
I would just say that if and this is a tough thing to say, but if you've ever been struggling in your life with not only physically but mentally, I want to encourage you to reach out to Mark at Functional Medical Institute. They come at it from an angle that I don't think we ever come at, and that is they first want to deal with you as a person, like I mentioned earlier. They'll get to know you and befriend you, and then they will definitely guide you on the right course to help you enjoy your life and have a better life. And I just want to encourage you that you've got to reach out to Functional Medical Institute if you can, and as soon as you can. It'll change your life.
Wow. And you know, we didn't even talk about that, and that's interesting. We didn't plan that, so thank you for that. And folks, thank you for listening too. What a great episode with a friend of mine, Jack Howell. He shared some nuggets. Control the zone. Your 10 for 10 day is coming, and I think that's amazing. And one thing I always want to appreciate you do when you watch these episodes is always subscribe right below to find out what's coming next. Because I want you to know what's coming next, who's coming up next, and don't let the hidden things, perhaps those things outside the zone in this case, bog you down and steal your best health. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on Healthcare's Missing Link.